Who doesn't love a good story? Stories help us learn, they connect us to our past, and of course, they entertain us. Storytelling is at the heart of everything Disney does. From the very beginning, Disney animation has brought timeless tales to life. Live action films helped expand the ways that Disney told stories on the silver screen, and the theme parks immersed us in the worlds of our favorite stories like never before. But over the years, we Disney fans have become especially fascinated by one story in particular, the story of Disney itself. The history of the Walt Disney Company is as rich and captivating as the stories it tells. In fact, Disney has dedicated more time and energy to collecting and preserving its own history than just about any other company I can think of. And where do you keep a collection of stories and histories and special artifacts when you want to preserve them and share them? In a library, of course. So, in honor of National Libraries Week, we are exploring the many ways you can connect with Disney through libraries, inside the parks, within the Disney company itself, and even in your own world. Hey, this is Synergy Loves Company, where we explore how Disney connects to everything so you can feel connected to Disney even when you can't be at the parks. I'm Eric, and keeping me company today, I'm really excited, is a Disney historian and writer whose current research focuses on Disney libraries. And that's probably no surprise because just like me, she's both a librarian and a Disney fan. Amanda Pemberton, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, I'm super excited to talk about this because, like I said, we're both librarians. It's something near and dear to our hearts. Um, so yeah, I think where I want to start talking is you have done a lot of work, well, on libraries and Disney, of course, but on the parks themselves. You have your Substack, Main Street Librarian, and you've done some work with WDW magazine, which of course is all about the parks. So let's start out a little bit with our favorite library spaces, and even like library-like spaces in and around the Disney parks. So I want to hear from you. What is what's your favorite Disney library spaces?
My favorite is probably, I don't know if you've been to the Voyageurs Lounge before at Riviera Resort. That is probably my favorite library space. And it was something I actually discovered a trip in 2023. But it's a library inspired lounge. And they've got a cafe kind of outside of it. But inside the lounge, it's filled with books and memorabilia. And it all kind of pays homage to Disney's history and Walt's love of travel. But what's kind of interesting is that I feel like this little space holds more history than people realize, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But they've got tons of like books all on the shelf. Like it's a beautiful space. Have you ever been, Eric, to inside the
So
Voyagers Lounge?
I was gonna say, I have never been inside Voyageurs Lounge. My family, we love to go. So we're Skyliner people, um,
Okay.
and we love to go to the Riviera just in general. And I've been in Riviera tons of times, but we have never taken the chance to go to the Voyager Lounge. Isn't
Okay.
that crazy?
That is crazy. Well, next trip.
Yes. So yeah, it's like one of those things that I'm like, I gotta make sure I do this. Yeah, I want you to sell me on it a little bit.
Oh, yes.
What makes it great for a library fan? Like what?
You walk in and it is floor to ceiling bookshelves filled with books. Now the books, they are fixed to the shelves, so you can't take them off to read or anything like that. But the books and the different pieces that they have on display in some of their glass cabinets, like I mentioned, it all connects back to Walt's European travels. But the books that are on the shelves actually they're supposed to represent the collection that Walt brought back with him from his trip to Europe in 1935. So Walt did a trip to Europe 1935. He bought tons of books. He bought, actually, I have the number here. Hold on. He
Nice.
bought about 335 books, and he was bringing them back to the studio. And actually, at that time, they had just hired their first official librarian for their Disney Studio Research Library. And they were hired just in time to catalog all of these books and receive them. And that's kind of what was added to that library collection. But what's neat about the Voyageurs Lounge, some of the titles, like if you look at the spines, they have specially curated this collection to have titles within it that were actually some of those same titles that were purchased by Walt Disney. So you'll see Pinocchio, you'll see Robinson Crusoe, and there's even copies of the invoices for some of these bookstores on display in
That's
those
so
glass
cool.
cabinets. Yeah, so you can go and have a look, and it shows you the list of book titles, and then again, you can correspond with what's on the shelves. So whoever designed this space, I'm just in awe by all of the details, from the book spines to those book invoices as well. It's just such a beautiful space, and it's all done with dark wood for the shelving. And I honestly, I want to go and sit in the Voyagers Lounge one day and do some of my research, because it's just such a wonderful vibe to it. It's definitely hands down my favorite library space. So it's kind of funny that we're starting with it. There's so many that I love, but
Yeah.
I have a special connection with this one too, and kind of how it inspired some of my own research. So no, it's a lovely space for sure.
That's awesome. And that's one of those things too where like I wonder if that's you talked about sitting in that space, kind of having that nice environment and wanting to even do your research there. It's like I wonder if that's one of those things that our favorite library spaces can tell us a little something about what kind of librarian we are, what kind of researchers we are, because it sounds like a really awesome, nice space um to work in. And it seems like it gets into that deep, rich history of the company, of Walt and
Yeah.
those stories he brought back. Which let's talk. I want to shift gears within the parks areas
Yeah.
and let's talk about the stories, of course, because one of the stories, I think, like if people see that this is a library episode, they're thinking, okay, one of the stories that like has a big library in it, of course, is Beauty and the Beast. And Beauty and the Beast has a lot around the parks
Yes.
that ties into kind of library spaces in the parks, all well, really all throughout the United States. So there's one that I'll call out first and say that it's gone. Pretty recently, a few years ago, is the Beast's Library was actually part of California Adventures animation experience kind of area, and it closed in 2022. But it was like you could go and interact in the Beast's library. But then I realized later, when you brought to my attention, that it was really just kind of a similar version to an attraction that's still at the Walt Disney World Magic Kingdom, and that is Enchanted Tales with Belle. I totally forgot that this show, I guess you'd call it a show, it's like an interactive experience,
Yeah.
takes place within the library.
That's right. Yeah. I'm gonna be honest. It was on my bucket list to do my last trip in March. I didn't get to it. March break, it's a busy time. So
For
it'll have
sure.
to be a next trip. But I did.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say this is one where I can tell you a little bit about it because I have
Yes.
done it.
Oh,
So
no, tell
take,
me.
yeah, I'll take over a little bit. So I don't know if this is a spoiler or not, but and I'm sorry if you're like, oh no, you just spoiled it for me, but I'll go into it because it is an attraction, of course. So you go in when you go in, you're not actually going into the castle, because the castle, of course, is the restaurant, the Be Our Guest restaurant, when you're in that section of Fantasyland. So you go into Maurice's cottage, and the coolest thing ever, and I still like I okay, I know in theory how it works, but I still don't know how it works. But the mirror on the wall magically transforms into a portal in through like space and time, that you travel through, and you
What?
magically find, yes, you magically then find yourself in the castle, like during the timeline of Beauty and the Beast, or like
That's so
just shortly
cool.
after. Yeah, it's the coolest thing. So then you kind of go into the cottage, you have that experience, and then you kind of like second, that's like the pre-show part, then you kind of second queue um through the castle, and you end up in the library where then Belle tells you a story. It's just like, like good old uh going to your public library, and it's, story time with the children's librarian, except the children's librarian is Belle.
That's so
So
magical.
it is really awesome.
Yeah,
And
I love
I can't believe it. I totally forgot that that was a that you'd see it in the library, because the show's happening and you're watching the show, and I was like, wait a minute, that was the library.
yes.
So no,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah, very neat. Yeah, like you said, I had seen pictures of the Beast Library at Disney's California Adventure. It looked very grand, like very like the tall ceilings. It looked very impressive. So I'm sad that I'll never get to see it. But no, this Enchanted Tales with Belle, my next trip, like it's a must. I'm a huge Beauty and the Beast fan. It's all about the library.
Yes.
So I have to make it to the show. Do you know what? Actually, when I was kind of looking through and seeing, because like you had mentioned, Belle is one, or Beauty and the Beast is one of those stories that when we think of Beauty and the Beast, we also think of that amazing library. There is also on the Disney Wish, there is also a library on there. Have you seen pictures of this?
I was unaware of this.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I was doing a little bit of digging, as one librarian does, doing a little research, and I was looking at the Disney Wish, and it's actually part of their kids club. So adults can't go unless it's one of those preview days, or I forget what they call them, but adults can
Yeah.
visit the space during, is it open hours, something like that. And so you can go and check out the space, but they actually have in one of their kids clubs, they've got Belle's Library. Now it's a lot smaller in scale, but it's got all the features. It's got the fireplace, it's got the bookshelves, it's got these beautiful, like everything's like beautifully decorated as well. The chairs, the carpeting, like it all is very cohesive. And again, they've brought Beauty and the Beast story, but to the Disney Wish this time. It looks really, really incredible. Another library. There you go.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
So many of them do have to do with Beauty and the Beast too, right? Because that is the quintessential Disney animated library movie.
the best. The best. I still think about it. I was one of those 90s kids that grew up with like the Disney Renaissance. And so Beauty and the Beast, I still remember seeing that scene and thinking, wow. Like I was impressed then, and still to this day, it gives me all the
Yeah.
feels when I watch that scene.
It
But
was a big deal. Just the movie
yeah,
in general, but and it was great to watch too, because I'm from that same generation. Those are my Disney movies, those 90s ones. And so that's, yeah. No, it's so cool. And so let's stick in with the Beauty and the Beast theme. And I'm gonna take your Voyageurs Lounge, that lounge idea, and the Beauty and the Beast stuff, and we're gonna smash them together, because there's another space that's like maybe library vibes, but not necessarily a library per se. And that's that uh the Enchanted Rose.
lovely. I love it. I think about it from time to time. It's such a lovely space.
Yeah, I've only ever visited it during the day. Like so when we travel to Walt Disney World, we don't often go, we'll go to the like the Seven Seas Lagoon Resorts is kind of like a midday break. So
Okay.
we usually pop in there and it's not yet open. So I've kind of like poked myself around
Oh,
there, but I've never actually sat down and kind of enjoyed a drink there, or
okay.
somewhat of their snacks.
Okay.
So, yeah. No, but it is a really cool, it's a cool space.
It is. But you're right, it's another lounge. It's yeah, no, you're absolutely right. If you do get a chance to go, their drinks menu is actually quite impressive. But you can order drinks, there's appetizers as well. But that's all that's what it is. Like it's drinks and appetizers. But it's actually a nice little place to stop in before going to dinner if you're within that kind of area anyways. Um, but no, like in terms of library aesthetics, of course, I had to get up from the table and check it out.
Yes.
But it has subtle nods to Beauty and the Beast. It's so tastefully done. Like you wouldn't, if you didn't know or hadn't seen Beauty and the Beast, I don't think you would make the connection, like the Beauty and the Beast connection. But if you were a Beauty and the Beast fan or a Disney fan and you're walking through the space, they have all of these subtle nods to Beauty and the Beast. Like they've got on the bookshelves, you can see Cogsworth and Lumiere on the fire mantle, and you also can see the Enchanted Rose. I now that I'm trying to think about it, they have pulled those kind of replicas from the live action movie. So Cogsworth and Lumiere and the Enchanted Rose, I believe like their style, it comes from live action. But they've got bookshelves in the space. So if you have a chance to check out the spines, I don't know what it is. Anytime I go to someone's house or I see bookshelves,
Yeah.
I'm always checking out the spines. I'm like, all right, what does this tell me about this person? But
Right.
yes, there's books on the shelves there. You can explore what's on them, but no, it's another beautiful library space. I don't know who comes up with these library spaces at Disney, but I want in. I want on this team.
Right. That would be so cool.
Right? To be a part of that conversation, like how do you like what how do you decide what books are going on the shelf? Like what's going into this space? I think that'd be such a neat um conversation to have with some of the Imagineers. But yes, another beautiful space. Enchanted Rose, wonderful. If you're getting maybe ordering a drink, is it the lavender fog? It's delicious. I highly
Mm,
recommend. Highly recommend.
I'm writing that down. Lavender fog. Just because I like the sound of that. No.
They and all of their drinks, like again, it's themed. It's themed to the space. I don't know. They do an excellent job there. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's that deep theming. And we're still hanging out in the theme park space here because there
Yeah.
are still more libraries that we can
Yes.
we can see in the parks. And what I think this is one of my favorites. And you actually you wrote about this one. You've wrote about a lot of the ones that you've posted about, I should say too. You've posted about on your Instagram a lot of these spaces. As being these awesome library spaces. But this one I know you did post a little while back, and that's the library in the Swiss Family Treehouse. Because I'm like, these people live in a tree, and they have the space to make a library. Everyone could have libraries and books in their lives.
I love that. Right? And they're thinking about the essentials to survive. And a library was one of those essential things. So yeah, absolutely. It's such a huge it's not I went to actually we did Swiss Family Treehouse again during my trip in March, and I had a closer look at the library because I always knew like the library, there's that sign there.
Yeah,
And I never really stopped to take it in. And I don't know what I thought. I thought there was a shelf or something. It's a desk with maybe like 7 books on the table. And I thought, I don't know why my bar was so high. They were shipwrecked. Like, what? Like that would make sense. 7 books they were able to salvage, and this is their little library. But like you said, the fact that they carved out a space for the library and they made a sign, and it's perfect. I would agree. It's another favorite little nod to a
yeah.
library space in the parks for sure.
And that's yeah, it's something simple, but it's
Yeah.
it's really it's really cool. And I like how it's kind of like one of those like you can really have a library anywhere, like those little free libraries people put
Yeah.
in their yards, and those things like that, like a bookmobile. Like you could have a library anywhere. And that I would love to study and do some research myself in the in the Swiss Family Treehouse, as a cool, other than all the people walking by watching you. But if you could just be up there by yourself and do a little research up in the Swiss Family Treehouse, that would be awesome.
It would be. It'd be perfect. Very tranquil.
All right. We still have more in Disney parks, more library. Can you believe? Because when you think about libraries in Disney parks, they don't like jump out at you necessarily,
No,
especially if you're not thinking about libraries all the time, which maybe we do more than most people. But they don't always jump right out at you like a big. I forgot about the one in Belle's Enchanted Tales. But we have, if we go down the treehouse and across the path, we get into the Skipper Canteen. And
yeah,
this is another one you brought up to me that I was like, I forgot that this was a very special room in the Skipper Canteen, and there is a library in it.
Yes. I think to your point too, I think it's so well integrated into their storytelling in the parks
Yes.
that I think you're right because we're librarians and we're thinking books. We're like, oh, library. But yeah, I think they do such a neat job integrating, especially some of the other libraries that we're going to talk about or library spaces that we're going to talk about with some of more attractions. But like you said, for the Skipper Canteen, um, I love the idea behind the restaurant as well. Like it's supposed to be their skipper's headquarters. And they opened up a kitchen and they connected all. I don't know how familiar you are with the sea storyline.
Oh, yes. I love
Yes,
it.
right? So as soon as I found out about that connection being integrated with the library, I was like, oh, the space is perfect. But for those that aren't familiar, there's 3 dining areas in the Skipper Canteen. And where the library is situated, it's kind of like in a little hallway. It's supposed to kind of replicate there was like a secret passage there at one point where you would have to kind of pull on one of the books as if it was like a lever. It kind of sticks out that way, which takes you into a back room, which is known as the sea room. Um, so what if and they say, I guess from some of the storytelling I was reading, it was once a secret meeting place for the Society of Explorers and Adventurers. So of course, naturally, I go and have lunch there. I check out the books, I check out the spines, I see what's there. Lots of Jungle Cruise skipper puns everywhere on these books. What else would you
Yes.
expect in a skipper
Yeah.
a skipper library? And a lot of nods to Disney legends and Imagineers as well, which I always love when they find ways to pay nods um, to some of our Disney legends and Imagineers through some of our through their work and their storytelling in the parks. Um, I don't think the shelves are actually called. I don't know if they actually label them as a library. They're a library to us. It is. It's several bookshelves. It's bigger than the Swiss Family Treehouse, so
For
it counts.
sure.
But again, the shelves, they're floor to ceiling. There's even artifacts on the shelves as well, and in they also have like hats as well on display that belong to members of Sea. So again, it's a well curated space. Imagineers, they did it again. Lots of thought went into what those books were on the shelves, which I always love to see. Um, but yeah, another beautiful space. So if you have time or if you're having lunch or dinner and doesn't matter what dining area you're sitting in, you can always kind of get up in between or after and check out the bookshelves. It's a really neat space as well.
I love that. And yeah, I was gonna say, I knew you were gonna have the scoop on the spines because that's the best part. And I love to hear that there's a lot of skipper jokes in there, but then also some of those SEAC, a Society of Explorer and Adventurer kind of people kind of represented. Because I always just want to know more about all of that. It's so
Yes.
like fun and mysterious, you know.
It is. It's almost like Disney lore or legend. Like people know about it, but it's not as well known, or I don't know how to describe it. Like it's not
Yeah.
in your face in the parks. Like it's very subtle, like their integration.
Yes. And they just keep finding new fun ways to kinda it's one of those things that connects a lot within Disney, which I
Yes.
love. Like when you can connect attractions together and then even like I know Jock Lindsay's Hangar Bar has some
Yes.
references to it too. So then it's like now we're pulling in the world of Indiana Jones into the
Yes.
Society of Explorers and Adventurers. So it's like there's just like layers, and it's just such a cool integration to get everything kind of combined like that. I love it.
Yeah, likewise, likewise. Um, Back to the books. I didn't even one of the examples, for instance, like just to give you an example for one of those skipper puns, like Primates of the Caribbean, of course, a play off Pirates of the Caribbean. Like it's stuff like that that's on the spines. Or there was even another one here where it says the author is Coates, which I assume is a nod to Claude Coates, who was a background
Oh yeah,
painter. He's also a Disney legend. But that's an example of the kinds of things you'll see on the book spines. But again, just such a fun way that they've integrated Disney legends, Imagineers, skipper jokes or skipper puns, and then like you said, also the or the Society of Explorers and Adventurers integration. It's all there. It's a really cool library space for sure.
that is so cool. Yeah, it's like we we uh we just need more of these, and we actually have a couple more, and then we have one that you and I were getting to, and Well, I'm gonna bring another one up.
Okay.
But let's talk about the Haunted Mansion, because there's some library spaces, and they would go from one iconic attraction, the Jungle Cruise and the Skipper Canteen, to the Haunted Mansion.
Yes. This is
Haunted
another
Mansion libraries, yeah.
Yeah, this is another favorite of mine. Like Voyageurs Lounge, I have like a personal special connection with my research and stuff like that. But Haunted Mansion is definitely, I think, my runner up. You don't see it for very long. Like you don't get to stay in the space, like very different from the Skipper Canteen where you can actually stay put, or even Swiss Family Treehouse. You can scope out the area. You're in your dune buggy, your time is limited, and you see it and then it's gone. And then you continue on the attraction. So you only have that blip of a moment to take in the library. But I love the Haunted Mansion in general. It's one of my favorite attractions. So naturally, the library, the fact that it has a library in the space is definitely near and dear to my heart. But what's interesting about the library is that this room, it's the only room inside the library space is only inside the attraction at Walt Disney World. And then I was having a look, it's only the only other spot is Tokyo Disneyland that has a library. The other versions of Haunted Mansion throughout the other parks, they don't have a library space. But
That's
I can only
interesting.
Yeah, yeah, because I know that I had to have a look because I know that they have changed the Haunted Mansion attraction in some of the different parks. And to be honest, I've never been on the Disneyland one. So I had to have a look. But yeah, it's just the two that have a library within them, which is interesting.
Yeah, and I'm sure I'm thinking, if I remember correctly, that Tokyo's is more or less a copy paste of Walt Disney World's, which would make sense that those are the
That makes
two.
sense then. Yeah, that
Um,
would make sense.
but yeah, no, for California's, for Disneyland's, when we went to Disneyland, the Haunted Mansion was of course closed for
Oh
refurbishment,
no.
so we didn't get to ride it there. But I've just always gone through it on Walt Disney World, so it's like it's cool that we have that flash of a space, but no, it's not anywhere else other than Walt Disney World and Tokyo.
Yeah, which is kind of neat. Makes it
That's
unique,
true.
special, yes. But the library, for those that, if you haven't been on the Haunted Mansion attraction, it's one of the first spaces you enter. And again, I love the aesthetics of this library. Like it's dark, it's very moody. You have floor to ceiling shelving again, filled with books. There's also library bus. I don't know if you're big on Halloween, but Spirit Halloween, I will say, if they had the marble busts from the library. They had
Yes.
it for the past 2 years in a row. I definitely bought one. I didn't buy the other one and I regret it. I hope they bring it back again this year. But those very marble busts that you see on display in the library, you can have them for your own personal home library, but those are there as well on the shelves. And they follow, you can see they have that illusion where they follow you as you move along in the
Yes.
dune buggy, which is a really cool effect by the Imagineers. There's also a table and some comfortable armchairs. It is, I don't think I would ever decorate in that fashion. I appreciate it and I love it. So I definitely love the vibe of it. But yeah, it definitely is very moody, very spooky. But definitely one up there is one of my favorites for sure.
Yeah. I agree with you in that. I love to look at it as I'm zooming by, but I don't think I would want to do my research and
No,
reading there. It would be too creepy for me. I don't like scary stuff that
no, no,
much.
no. In and out. This was nice. Let's move on.
All right. Some people I know, that's their vibe, and they would love
Yes.
to just like hang out in there, but that's, yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm good. I can move on to the next. Let's keep that doom buggy moving. Um, another detail actually about the Haunted Mansion that I wanted to bring up. There's the library space, but actually in the queue, there's also another bookish reference when you're walking through the Haunted Mansion queue. So you have the graveyard and you see all of the tombstones. There's actually a crypt for the poet Prudence Pock. And there's a glowing book inside the crypt that you can have a look at that has Prudence's poetry. So I guess I've done lightning lanes or I've gone late enough in the evening where I haven't really spent a whole lot of time waiting in the queue. But if anyone who's listening finds themselves in the queue, definitely another bookish reference to have a look out for.
Yeah, that's really yeah, because they do sometimes cut off some of those Easter eggs from the queue if it's
Yes.
short enough. So that's a good point. I know sometimes I'll be like, "We saw that last time, but why did we oh, no, it was back there, and they didn't make us go through there." Like, you know what I mean? And it's kinda sad sometimes, but then on the other hand, it's like, "Okay, I know I do wanna get on this
Yeah,
ride faster, so I'll take it."
exactly.
But no,
Exactly.
that's a good one to look out for if you're in the queue.
Yeah.
So, like, as we're talking about, like, these libraries and these spaces that Disney, they do so well, and they do that theming so well that they are just embedded
Yeah.
in the spaces. Um, your Substack and your Instagram is Main Street Library and Main Street Librarian for Instagram. And that really made me think of how there isn't a library on Main Street. And if Walt was really going for that whole spot, of like the town square, like what more would you need a library, right? So
Well,
I
so
know you have thought about that before, of course,
yeah.
because we were talking a little bit about that. But I want to hear what you would want from a Main Street library in
This is
Walt Disney World or Disneyland.
Yeah. It almost feels like a missed opportunity because you're right. Like if you go to any sort of like small town or just any city, like usually not far from Main Street, you would have your public library. So yeah, it's funny that you bring that up because I was mentioning before my parents and I we were talking about, I'm switching my Substack to Main Street Library and I'm now Main Street Librarian on Instagram. And I had mentioned to them or we were chatting and talking about wouldn't it be neat like where would a Main Street library be on Main Street, like where on Main Street USA would that even be located. I need to do a trip back. This is again me just justifying I need to go back.
I support that. I
Right,
support that.
I will take any excuse, any opportunity to jump back there. But yes, a trip to decide where would be the best location to have Main Street Library. um, but what would be like where it would be located? I think that square is such a prime spot. Um, so definitely somewhere there, I think would be the best location for a library. And when I think about this, is just me being imaginative, but like to think what would be in the like in the collection or available. I think how you had mentioned how Disney does such a great job kind of embedding their history within the parks and how they preserve their own history, and they're a company that does that very very well. I think a lot of those books and resources would be in a Main Street library. Like that's what I would envision the space to have. It would have all the things, but doing just covering that content for sure.
That's now I want there to be a Main Street library, but there is one on Substack, so people could go see how I did that there. So people could
Love
go
that.
find you there. But no, that would be so cool because I love things like one man stream and
Yeah.
like I wish we had more of that.
Yes, I agree. I'm a big fan of stuff like that in the parks for sure.
That's so cool. So we've talked a lot about the parks, and we were just getting into that real history of Disney, talking about what a Main Street library might be. And I want to talk about those real Disney libraries because I think both of us love the fact that Disney has done such a good job of using libraries in the company and preserving their history and preserving the stories, bringing, like you mentioned, those the books that were brought back by Walt to kind of help start a library in the company back in the 30s. So let's talk about the real libraries of Disney.
All right.
And
This
yeah,
is like my bread and butter. I've been doing
I
so much
know.
research on this. It's
I'm
so
just gonna
fun.
let you go. I'm just gonna let you go run with it because I just want to like learn and absorb from you on the
Absolutely.
actual Disney libraries.
And I'm still learning. And that's the thing about, I think, being a librarian too. Like, you're always doing research, you're always finding information. And I think that's been the fun part about learning about Disney libraries is that now I'm doing this research and learning for myself. They're just such incredible spaces. But just to kind of kick things off, I've got a list here. First up, I'm just having a look here. I think what I'm going to The first one I want to talk about is the Walt Disney Studio Research Library. Now, it no longer exists, but just tying back to the Voyageurs Lounge, those books that Walt Disney had brought back from his trip from Europe in 1935, I believe from what I have been able to find, I think it's possible that the library existed starting in 1930, but no librarian had been hired yet. So I still have to do a little bit of digging, but it seems from some of the research I've been able to find, in 1930 there was a space with resources, but no librarian to look after the collection. So the first librarian for that space actually was hired in 1935, but the first librarian was her married name afterwards was Helen Hennessy. She married actually someone who worked in the animation department at Disney. A lot of that happened during the time. But she was the first librarian hired in 1935, and she cataloged that whole collection of books brought back from Europe. But the library itself, it provided research for the animated and live action films. And I don't want to speak too much to it, but some of the research I've been doing, I've been looking at, people who worked there and the different work that they did. But the library served many different departments. There were many studio research libraries during that time. I would say about the 1930s, almost every studio had a library to help with research support for their films. But the library at the Disney studio, it served the animation department, story department. It also helped do research for company lawyers, designers, just to name a few different departments. Like wasn't just the story department. It just wasn't just the animators that sought help from the library staff there. It served quite a few different departments, but mainly predominantly their bread and butter was doing research for animated and live action films. But the library, it did disband in 1986, so they no longer have the Studio Research Library. They do have other library spaces we'll talk about in a little bit, but that space no longer exists.
Gotcha. That's a
Yeah.
so it disappeared under Michael Eisner, who
Yes.
he's my favorite, but now I'm a little mad at him. No.
I know. I feel so torn as I was doing this research because I was listening to another podcaster and they jokingly referred to him as Mikey, and I'm like, oh, Mikey. As
Yeah.
soon as I had found out that the library was disbanded under
Yeah.
his time there, but yeah, looking into and uncovering kind of, reasons why. And there were a lot of studio libraries kind of dissolving, and they were selling and they were donating their collections to public libraries. And some individual people were even buying these collections and then running private libraries. So it wasn't just Disney at the time doing away with the research libraries. There was a lot of studios that kind of were doing away with it. So it's still information that I'm still trying to dig through and understand. But yeah, it's a very interesting history for sure.
Yeah, that is so cool. And I do love reading your updates on your research with it, because
Oh, thank
you from
you.
time to time will pop up with some cool stuff that you found out through interviews or just like deep dives and all that kind of stuff. So that's really good stuff. This kind of library, like it would be a lot of kind of external sources, right? Not like within the company sources, but like if I wanted to find information that I could use to make my movie, or was it, am I mistaken, was it a lot, was there more internal resources from Disney?
They did collection development. Like they would bring in resources like books. They had magazines. They would do a lot of like clippings, like getting different images, and they had a picture collection as well, is my understanding, that say animators would use for reference. They did a lot of interesting, like I was talking to some of the different researchers that worked there, and some of their reference questions that they would get, like they would be making a phone call to a different state and saying, hey, do you have a person by such and such name, or does this license plate or this postal code, is this actually used within that state? Like very obscure questions. So again, questions from some of the lawyers, for instance, like got to make sure we don't get sued with some of the
Yeah,
information that's being included in the script and things like that. Definitely
yeah,
from a library perspective, it's very interesting. But from the people I've talked to, they did a lot of amazing work. I'm just in complete awe
yeah.
um, from some of the research that they did. And So that library is disbanded. There are still library spaces or libraries that exist within the Walt Disney Company. Again, I'm still doing research to find if there's more or just even more information on some of the ones that I'm already aware of. There's the Animation Research Library, which, as I went through learning about it, it acts more of an archive, kind of. You'll understand what I mean in a second. It's
Okay.
not so these libraries are not open to the public. They're just for internal use. There is a request form, though. I've done some digging. There's a request form if you want to request and inquire if you can do, if you're an individual researcher. Um, I think that's a lot. It's a difficult process. I'm going to try it though. I'm going to try and fill it
I'll
out.
go for
But
it. Yeah.
I'm going to take my chances and see what's the worst they can say. But yes, it's not open to the general public. What this library does, it preserves Disney's animation history. It was actually once called the Morgue until the 1980s. It used to be actually located under the studio grounds. There were tunnels underneath. That's how they would take and transfer some of the different cells back and forth between ink and paint and then the animation building. But they actually have this building, right, or sorry, they have the morgue located just underneath ink and paint, and it housed old scripts and animation art, like concept art and animation cells, a bunch of those pieces. And so what would happen is after working on a film, all that research, concept art and animation would have to be put somewhere, making room for the next project. And so they would basically shove it in the morgue, just below the ink and paint building. But from what I understand, the Animation Research Library, it has since moved. It's no longer there. I'm not sure where it's located today. There's actually a YouTube video you can watch, and Don Hahn is the host, and he does a whole tour of the Animation Research Library. It's a really great video if you want to have a closer look and see the amazing work that they do there. But he tours it, and they have a look at how this library houses original sketches, concept art pieces, sculptures, animation cells. So really, they do preservation work there, it seems. And employees from the company, they can access materials, for inspiration, research purposes, to help kind of inform future projects that they're working on and things like that. It's a really neat space, but I say it is called a research library, but it almost acts like an archive because they're still preserving those original
Yeah.
selves. But it's interesting because what they're being used for is definitely like it's still a library. It functions as a library. People are coming to use those materials as reference materials. So it's an
Yeah.
interesting space.
That is a very interesting it's a library and an archive all in one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really is. But yeah, there's the Animation Research Library. And then I guess talking a little bit about archives, there's the Walt Disney Archives. Again, this is closed to the public. However, you can tour a bit of the archives if you do a Disney Adventures tour or D23. If you are a member, they offer different events that you can sign up for. And the archives, you can do a studio lot tour, and the archives is included on that tour. That is definitely a bucket list item for me. I have not done it, but it is something I really want to do one day.
Yeah, that would be
um,
so cool.
yeah, right. Now, libraries and archives, I guess for those listening, I don't know how clear, I guess people seem to think, or people I've talked to, they seem to interchange archives and libraries sometimes. So just so that people who are listening, libraries, they're designed more for, like, I guess, accessing information. Like, they collect materials like books, magazines, digital resources. People use them for reading and research, for education, things like that. Whereas an archive, it's more about preservation. They have unique historical materials such as letters, photographs, manuscripts, things like that. So their purpose is more preservation, historical research, stuff like that. So just so if people are listening, they're like, oh, libraries, archives, there is a bit of a difference. But they're very much, they've got a lot of crossover and
Yeah.
similarities. So that's why in library world, um, archivists and librarians, like we're all part of the same world, if you will, but
Yeah.
just two different spaces.
It's like
But
siblings in the same family.
yes, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. That's a good way to describe it. But the Walt Disney Archives, it was established in 1970 by Dave Smith. I'm a huge Dave Smith fan,
Me
right?
too.
As soon as I found out he had his MLIS and he was a librarian, I was like, oh my gosh, there was someone who worked at Disney and he was a librarian
Yeah.
and he was an archivist. Um, I'm a huge Dave Smith fan. But he established the archive. He was actually working, if I have the facts straight, I was reading about him. He had worked, I guess, was it UCLA? He was
It
working,
was.
yeah,
Yes.
at the libraries. And then this is sort of a neat story. And Disney, I guess UCLA wanted to see if they could house some of Disney's records and like and create, not like, not act as an archive, but I guess so, like just helping out with that. And they realized that Disney was just so big they wouldn't be able to look after their collection. And so I guess Dave Smith had come up with a plan and submitted it to Disney, and Disney like basically tapped on his shoulder and said, hey, why don't you come start an archive for us? And that's how we kind of got going with developing and establishing the archive at Disney. But yeah, Dave Smith established it. um the archives during the time of Dave Smith, I want to say, from what it looks like, he was very good about opening the doors of the archives to independent researchers and people who wanted to come and use some of those materials. Now I feel like the vibe has very much changed since Dave is no longer there. Like I said, it's not open to the public. It's mainly internal use for those materials. Um, but nevertheless, like I said, you can go and do a studio tour and have a peek inside the reading room. And I don't know what other spaces they show you within the archives, but it is something people can check out for sure.
Yes, and I've heard I love a good Dave Smith story, and I'm glad you shared his like origin story because yeah, I do love the fact that he had his MLIS degree, his Masters of Library and Information Science, like us librarians, right? So he's like us, he's like us.
Yes,
And
exactly.
he always so I always hear these stories about early Dave Smith. I've read in different places or heard on different interviews and podcasts and things where he would like just kind of like show up and like rifle through things to find stuff and then like take it when he was like, I think this is important, or like go digging. And um I think he was one of the ones who helped locate. There was what was it? There was something from the Mary Poppins original movie that like ended up on a janitor's closet shelf, but it was like Dave Smith and his mentality of like, let's just go into rooms and like, hey, what's that? What's this? And just kind of like rifle through the Disney property. So I just have this like vision of him like on the studio lot, just like climbing through
So
bushes,
legit.
looking through
Yeah.
windows, just like anywhere. I'm gonna find the stuff. So that's like my
Oh,
tall tale version of Dave Smith, but I just love that idea,
yeah, absolutely. Oh, Dave. I
right?
still remember as a kid, I had a Disney magazine. I only had one. Like, it was a special edition for the 75th anniversary of Mickey Mouse. And I still remember going to the back and it had an Ask Dave column. And I remember reading, I was like, oh gosh, I would love to submit a question. And it wasn't until years later that I made the connection that that was Dave Smith. It took a while for me to make that connection. But I was like, oh my goodness, like the very person that I think, wow, this guy's really cool. He has his MLIS is Ask Dave from that magazine. So it
And
took me a little longer than some people to make that
and it's
connection. But
crazy that that's the part you gravitated towards
yes,
growing up with that
yeah,
magazine, and then that's the direction you went, right?
meant
That's
to be, meant to be.
oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. So that's the archives. One other library I do want to mention is the Imagineering Library. And this is the library I know the least about. I feel like there's not a ton of information about it. It's very hush hush secret. I can say that it was formerly the WED Library, the Walter Elias Disney Library, before Imagineering got that branding. And the space and it wasn't when Disneyland was built, my understanding is the WED library did not exist yet. And so, actually, the Walt Disney Studio Library fielded a lot of the research and reference questions that they had about, constructing Disneyland. So, if there were any questions, that went all to the Studio Research Library. Um, so, after that, I'm not sure. See, I can't even find a date of when it actually opened and like when they first kicked off the Imagineering Library. But all I know is that it came after, I believe, Disneyland. And that is all I know about that library.
And I think that's what they want us to know about it. Because just like Imagineering, they rarely open those doors and let us in, unless it's something like, like the Imagineering story documentary where we get to see some
Right.
of that stuff. They don't like to, and I think I love reading Imagineering books. Like I'm currently reading the Bob Weiss
Oh,
with
it's
the
so
dream chasing. Yeah,
yes.
I'm almost finished with it. And it's like you do get a little bit more insight to that
Yes.
world through those books, but it's still you don't get it all. You just get a
No.
little bit each time. It's piecing that puzzle together.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love Imagineering books. I'm like, tell me more. It's the secret. It's
Right.
they know what they're doing. They definitely know what they're doing. They have us hooked.
And they're
Um,
using their library to make it happen, but we don't know much
yes,
about it.
exactly. So that is definitely one library. If I could try to learn more about it, it's definitely on my list to try and uncover more about it. But very, very intrigued by this library and what they do for sure. I want to know the reference questions they get. I'm dying to know.
Right. Yeah, they gotta be some pretty specific, industry,
Right?
very, which is why I think it would eventually they probably decided they had to uh, do their own library
Yes.
because using the studio's library, you know, if they're asking these super specific, engineering style questions, it's like, okay, I think we need to stop using all the resources there to find our things and start developing our own collection.
Yeah,
Um,
specialized collection for
a
sure.
specialized one, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, let's try to see, and they don't even let you submit to get into that one, so that's not even an option.
No, that's a no-go. That's not a studio tour option at
Mm-mm.
all.
So we don't got that going on.
No.
So yeah, that's one thing about Disney libraries, even though they're there and they're very real and they're about the real world and about the company and about helping all the Imagineers, the animators find the information that they need, whether it's historical within the company or without. We don't have access to those as just regular people. But one of the reasons I make this show is because uh, I want to make sure that I can feel connected to Disney, even though I don't get to go to the parks that often. So I'm always trying to look for the Disney in the world around us. Like, what is it that we can find in the world around us? And there are plenty of libraries that we can get into
Yes.
that do have a lot of Disney in their collections or have special collections of Disney. I know, like, I was super excited one day at my own public library. I found a copy of John Hench's book Designing Disney, Imagineering the Art of the Show at my library. And I was able to check it out and read it. It's still there. I know it's still there. I check on it every once in a while to make
Good.
sure it's still there, so that no one has lost it or damaged it and it's not in our collection anymore. But my local public library has it, and I love that I could get it there because when I've looked for it online, those are pretty expensive used copies of that book, and I
Yes.
that's so I love that I was able to get it from my local public library, and that's kind of where I want to shift right now is to those libraries that we can visit, and some of them you have even recently visited. So let's talk about not necessarily all public libraries because some are not in, like public library situations, but publicly accessible libraries that
Yes.
have
I think it's
Disney
a good way to phrase
collections.
it for sure. Um,
Yes.
one library. So again, I went to Florida in March, and one of the places that was on my list to visit was the Orlando Public Library because I had heard about their Disney collection and I wanted to check it out for myself. So you actually have to physically go to check out this collection, but if you're ever in the area, I do encourage you to go and have a look. You can have a look at the materials. I'm not a Orlando Public Library card holder. I was able to go and have a look at the collection. They have materials ranging on books about the parks, picture books of Disney art. They also have lots of things within their file folder. So they have lots of different filing cabinets filled with periodicals and newsletters. Some of them were internal Disney newsletters, which
Ooh.
were really neat to check out. Yeah, clippings. So they have different press clippings. So there was as soon as they announced that Disney World was going to be built in Florida, the library staff took it upon themselves at that time at the library to collect as many like press clippings and materials as possible, and it's developed into this robust collection at Orlando Public Library today. They also have a lot of other miscellaneous items such as pamphlets and things, just tons and tons of different items they've collected throughout the years. It's an incredible collection. They have archival boxes filled with items too that are just too large to put into the filing cabinets, but all there for you to check out and explore. One librarian in particular, Jane, she was phenomenal when I went to go visit. She showed me actually a copy of the economic impact report that they had prepared for Walt Disney Productions. So as soon as she showed me that, she knew what to show me to make me go, oh my gosh, because I had told her that I was also a librarian. I really wanted just to check out the collection. I said, I kind of wanted to poke around and see if there's any like things to support my own research. But mainly I just wanted to see it. So she's like, oh, you want to see some cool stuff? And she showed me this. And of course my jaw just dropped. I was like, this is really cool.
Right.
Yeah, just really incredible. There's a binder that they have there. So in case you do go, it is on the top floor. There's a binder you can search through. They also have a digital version of what's available in that binder on one of their desktops. So you can, I would suggest using the desktop because you can use the good old Control F and kind of
Yes.
search and see some of those descriptions with a little bit more ease. But lots there to look through, lots of things preserved. Some things were sent over from their description on their website. Some things were sent over by the Disney archivist. So some things come from the archives over in California. So lots of different materials available there. But that's just one example of how a public library they've built their own Disney collection. And there's actually a lot of libraries I've seen online. They've got digital collections or they have in-house collections, a lot in California, especially. But with being in Canada and living in Canada, I don't always get to travel to Disney like we were talking about.
Yeah.
It's not somewhere I can frequently go. And so, again, I'm trying to find likewise ways I can connect with Disney when I can't be at the parks. And so my research is one of those ways that I do that. And so it was lovely to go see Orlando Public Library, but being able to connect with libraries and archives and museums remotely has been a huge game changer for my research. And so one example is the Los Angeles Public Library. I was trying to connect some dots with some of the early librarians that worked at the Studio Research Library. And I knew that Los Angeles Public Library used to have a library school, which is now run out, I believe, out of UCLA. So I knew that they had possibly some different collection within their collection, some different resources. They have a special collections and rare items and a rare book collection. They have lots of items. So honestly, I just sent them an email and said, hey, I'm looking for this information. I don't know what you have within your collection. Just wanted to throw it out there and see, have you had questions asked before? Are you aware of any resources or any materials you might have? And Rose from Los Angeles Public Library, she's also been a great resource. Got back to me right away. Again, I'm not a Los Angeles Public Library card holder. I live in Canada. I'm not even from the United States. And just that's the wonderful thing I feel about libraries, museums, and archives. Everyone's so eager to help. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. And that's just, again, the wonderful thing about these spaces. They're just wanting to help and wanting to do research and how can I make those connections to help you make those connections. And yeah, she was able to find me things within their archival collection. She took pictures for me. There's options for scans that I could pay for. But again, there's all these libraries available to us, and you don't have to physically go. Just shooting off an email and asking and inquiring, someone's going to get back to you. And the worst they can say is, no, sorry, I can't help you, or no, sorry, we don't have anything related to what you're looking for. But we're very much connected to all of these spaces, and even in a digital sense, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, and I love that you bring that up because like I think too, um, as librarians ourselves and the like you talked about, like the librarians want to help you, but we're not salespeople. So if you
Yeah.
ever go to your library or you're asking like, we want to be asked, but we also don't want to be pushy. We don't want
Yes,
to be like in your face when you walk in and like try to, we're not trying to sell you a car. We just want you to use the library, and we would love for you to ask us a question, but if you don't feel like it, that's okay too. So it's like, no, definitely reach out and ask. Reach out and ask always, because you found out a lot of good information by just asking.
absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. So, like you mentioned, there's a lot of great resources at those libraries, and some of them are kind of far away, and we can't necessarily just go right over to them. And I had mentioned earlier how I found that book at my library, but I know like my public library doesn't have a whole lot of Disney at it. I don't know. Does yours have a pretty decent amount of Disney? Well, and when I
No,
say, yeah,
it's lacking.
it,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I don't I understand that, because not everyone is us. Not everyone is us Disney fanatics, and it, I feel bad. I know I can request that my library buy, um, like for instance, the newest Bob Weiss book, or the new Bob Weiss book, or that they could buy any of these Disney books that are coming out recently, or have come out, or are on the way out. But I feel bad if I'm gonna be the only person who ever checks that book out. So I have some of it behind me on my shelf. This is where I keep some of my Disney library, because it was getting too big for our general bookshelves in the other side of the room over here. But I have been collecting my own Disney library, and I know you do the same. So I kind of wanted to see what your advice is about building your own Disney library collection. And that's, I want to point out, that was an idea that you kind of opened to my brain as we were planning for this episode. So what's your Disney collection like, and how do you build it?
my Disney collection, I like to say, is a work in progress
Always,
because
right?
always,
Yeah.
right? There's always more room on the shelves. There's always more shelves I can add. I just can't get enough of it. We work in libraries all day, and I just want to come home and build one in my own home. There's just something about books at home and in your general living space. It's lovely. You can kind of see them behind me here. But yes, it's a work in progress. I like to collect. In the beginning, I was doing a little bit of fiction and nonfiction. I have now I just strictly collect nonfiction Disney books. Specifically, I'm looking at history books, or anything like on Imagineering, the parks. I've now been learning more about animation history, and so I've been collecting more animation related books as well, just so that to have more of an understanding about the studio research library and how that world worked. But how to build your own kind of library, I've thought a lot about this, because it's something I want to share more about, I guess, too, on my Substack and on Instagram, and just show people that you can build your own collections. Definitely use your public libraries. They're great resources, and if especially if you don't have the budget to build libraries and always buy books, they're great to use. But there's definitely books, especially within the world of Disney, that are out of print, or a small press published a certain text by someone, and they only did so many copies, and so it's a rarity. Like Bob Gurr's book, the Imagineer, his book on design is, I mean, you can find it, but it's not as findable, if that makes sense. Like it's kind of hard to find, especially at a good price as well.
Yes.
So some of these books are quite expensive that are out of print. So there's different kind of, I guess, tips and tricks I have to building your library collection, because it's kind of nice to have your hands on copies of those books that your public library, like you mentioned, won't have necessarily access to. Um, so what I kind of think about building your own library, you definitely want to think about curating your own collection, think about what kinds of books you want to collect. So I mentioned I look for history books, and I've got certain topics that I'm interested in. So definitely build your collection based off of your interests, not just, I'm trying to find every Disney book, or, oh, this is a Disney book, I'm just going to buy it. Like, that's not the way to do it. You want to buy books that you're A, going to read, and B, you're going to enjoy. So building your collection off of, what your interests are and what you want to read about is definitely where you want to start with building your own collection. For finding books, I am big on scouting out thrift stores, Facebook Marketplace. If you have any local Disney events, like where I am, we have a Disney pin trading and collectible event a few times a year where we all get together, and pin trade, and people are selling things like that they have from their own collections. And so that's a great, if you can find an event with locally within your area, those are great places too to find used books. Going to traditional bookstores, maybe even some of your independent bookstores, and supporting them as well, to get those new releases, like you mentioned, Bob Weiss's book, some of those new books that come out from Disney Books, or some other publishers as well. You can find them there. eBay is another great spot to check out to find books that are out of print as well. But yeah, just keep in mind too, not all Disney books are published by Disney Books. So, sometimes people publish independently, they're published by smaller or less well known presses. So, just kind of keeping that in mind, you might be surprised what you won't find at a traditional bookstore and what you will probably more likely to find on places like eBay or Facebook Marketplace. For finding book titles, I do have a resource, and I will send this to you if you don't know about it. Oh, forgive me, I'm probably going to mess up his name. Didier Guez. He is a Disney historian. Do you have, oh, you have something from his collection?
I have a few of his Walt's People books
Yes. Okay.
as I
So
turn and look at my shelf here. No,
amazing. Okay. So it is my ambition, my goal to collect the whole Walt's People series. If
there's a
people are
lot.
looking for, like, right, there's a lot, but if people are into Disney history, like, this is like, these are oral history interviews collected and put into these books. They're wonderful resource if you're really into Disney history or if you're doing Disney history research. But yes, Didier Gaz,
Mhm.
our friend here who has edited, I think he's the editor of that whole series. He has a book list that he's compiled on his website. It is the most extensive book list I have ever seen when it comes to Disney books. He has like basically listed every book that has ever been published on the topic of Disney. And if he's read it, he's reviewed it, and he puts like a little blip
Amazing.
about what his thoughts are about it. He also has a list of forthcoming books as well. So if you're kind of looking to see what's coming down the pipe, from Disney books, but also from some different publishers as well, he makes mention of them there. So he is a fantastic, if you're looking to see, what books you want to add to your collection, books you want to try and search and see if you can find used copies of, he has a really great compilation, like a list of all different types of Disney books. People can also follow different publishers or different Disney historians or authors on social media as well. That's kind of how I find out about new books coming, or even just to see what already exists that maybe I wasn't even aware of. Different authors will promote their books on their socials as well. So that's another place to go and have a look to see what's coming, what's already out. I'm also going to put a bit of a shameless plug for myself here, but you can also follow me. I
Yeah.
talk a lot about books. I talk a lot about, where I find books and, different resources and tools to building your own collection. So Instagram and Substack, if you're interested. I'm a
Yeah.
Disney loving librarian. I talk about it a lot. So you
You
can
I
use it
think
as a resource too.
just recently I had heard about the book that was this is going to be it's my next one on my list when I finished Dream Chasing. But I had heard about that book that was after Disney that kind of gets into um Ron Miller kind of era and all that stuff that's not well documented. And I just heard about it. I looked at online, I ordered it, and then I went on Instagram and you had posted that you had it. And I was like, I had just gotten mine the day that I saw that you posted, or it was something like that. And I was like, I just got the book too. So you do post good stuff about books,
Thank you.
and yeah, definitely go follow Amanda for more stuff on books.
I guess something else worth mentioning too, your own personal library doesn't have to be just books. You know, there's a lot of people that save park maps or they save other documents that they have found and saved over the years, like, you know, from past trips or things like that. So, or even, you know, movies. I'm a big physical media collector. I physical media is not dead, not to me.
Right.
So I still collect DVDs and Blu-rays and stuff like that. So that's a part of I consider that part of my own library collection. So you know your library collection can go beyond the books if you wish it to. And I guess to another tip with keeping things organized, I've talked about it before on my Substack, but there's something for free. You can create an account. And it's called Libib. I don't know if you've used it before, if you're familiar, but you can basically make your own like catalog for your at-home collection, and it's really great to use. You can just use your phone to even scan the barcodes on the back of your books, and it'll add them right to your collection. You can organize your collection by material type. So I have my movies separate from my books. That in itself is a work in progress still. You can create tags to help you search through your collection. But if you're looking for a way to, you know, it's you can scan your shelves and you can see what's there. But if you're looking to organize it in a digital sense so that, you know, if you're out shopping and you're like, do I have a copy of this? You can pull up your Libib account on the app and see what you have. It's a really great tool to help you organize your at-home library collection. So that's just another tip if you're looking to help organize what you have.
Yeah, that would be good because I have double bought things before.
We've all fallen
Well,
victim to
look at
it.
this, they have it, and then I get home, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I think I got that one, like, a year ago," in the same kind of situation. Um, so yeah, no, I should look into, cataloging these ones better. I'll get into the library tech of it, right?
Yeah.
No, that's a good suggestion, it's a good way to catalog all that stuff. All right. So no, I've got some more library research to do after having this conversation, which that makes me happy because I always love when there's more research to do. So I want to thank you so much, Amanda, for this conversation. It was a lot of fun, and you introduced me to some new stuff that I'm really excited to hear about, and I'm really excited to learn more about that studio library, which I know the best source of information on that is you. So could you tell us all where we can find you online so that we can keep up with the story of that?
Absolutely. So you can find me in two spots online. If you'd like to follow me on Substack and subscribe there, I'm on Substack as Main Street Library. So I do a lot of sharing of book content resources and sharing my own research. So I am doing my own research on the Walt Disney Studio Research Library and trying to basically connect the dots and put those puzzle pieces together about that history. So you can follow me along on Substack and see how far I get with that research. You can also follow me on Instagram, Main Street Librarian. Again, I share a lot of similar content on there, book recommendations. I share resources, and again, some research updates, just little bits and pieces on Instagram as well.
Well, that's awesome. And everyone definitely should go out, subscribe to the Substack, go check out the Instagram, subscribe there to follow, and definitely keep up with it. Cause like I said, she's got the information on the newest books. She's got the information about those libraries, and it's just great content. So go check out Amanda, the Main Street Librarian. And so I want to thank Amanda again for joining me on the show. And I want to thank you again for joining us on this awesome adventure through Disney's libraries, whether they're fantastical or really real in our own lives. The Disney libraries are all around us, just like Disney is all around us. And remember, Disney magic isn't just in the parks, it is all around us. So go out in the world and keep discovering the magic in everything, like your own local public library.